All right. Well, good morning. Welcome to our morning devotions. Just a housekeeping note as we begin today. If you notice, Facebook is continuing to delete these morning devotions. They're not keeping them, and that's the way they show up. But all of this is on Providence Baptist Church, Manassas, Virginia, on YouTube. So if anyone wants to see this after it's been deleted, it's Providence Baptist Church, Manassas, Virginia, and that would be the address for YouTube. And YouTube is just storing them all, as far as I know. I mean, I post them all on YouTube just to make sure we keep them. So just a little housekeeping note this morning. Good to see everybody. This is episode 204 from First Kings 3, verses 16 through 28. And I entitled this, You Can Have Your Half. You can have your half and a mother's love. That's what we're dealing with here. This section is perhaps one of the most well known stories when it comes to Solomon. This is when you have the two women that have babies, and we're going to look at it. And this is where he says, Bring me the sword, and I'll cut the living baby in half. But we'll look at that passage. But I just want you to know that what we're looking at here, what makes this so significant, which comes back really to what I was saying yesterday about this divinely endowed wisdom, is there's no law for this. There is no law to adjudicate what Solomon is confronting. And so often, when you deal with things as an individual in every phase of life, there is nothing written down. Most of the time, in what we do, there's nothing written down. Because if there's something written down, then we can go to that. These are judgments that we make based on other sources of information. And here, the key that governs this is Solomon's understanding of human nature and a mother's love. You see, now this is going to be the principle that he utilizes. He's going to appeal to a mother's love as part of human nature in something that is not written down. When we talk about the wisdom of God, and I say that it touches on everything, it touches on everything. And when we talk about the scripture, it touches on everything. And you say, well, it doesn't specifically say that. And I use the blue car, red car story, which just it's crazy, but it doesn't specifically say. But there are all these other factors that the Bible teaches that we can draw on, although it might not be explicitly stated in the Bible. I might not have an actual verse for it, but there is a principle that governs the decision that's made. And that is what you're looking at here. Solomon does not appeal to any source except human nature and the nature of a mom's love for her child. That's all this is about. This so in one way it's simple. In another way, it's extremely complex because if you're not able to draw on other things to come up with a conclusion, I mean things that the Bible addresses, and draw on those things by way of application, then what we're looking at here is not gonna it's not gonna work. I mean, it worked for Solomon because he has this divinely imparted wisdom, but it will not be able to function in the same way. So when I say again that you have to internalize the Word of God, and then you have to learn to think thoughts after God, and which touches on all of humanity, everything that deals with life and godliness is in the Scripture. It's all there. And you need it all to be able to come up with this, because he says, wait, let's just turn to this part of the law and we can adjudicate this. The reason he's there, and I looked it up this morning, why these two women came right to the king is amazing, all right? And I said perhaps they'd already exhausted every other course, but nobody thinks that. They think that this is just the way these kind of issues were handled, that you came to the king to manage these things, all right? And so it calls these women harlots. The root word here means that essentially that they were bartenders, okay? That's the idea, that they worked in a place that sold liquor and food, but basically they are bartenders. And the reason they're called harlots is because they have these children out of wedlock, not because they were like a Rahab harlot, all right, so to speak, with a brothel. These are just women that are on their own. They have children out of wedlock. They're identified as harlots because of that. But the root of this is that they were, I mean, I'm giving to you, like the Cliff Notes here. Essentially, they were bartenders or worked in a restaurant. All right, the same root deals with men that are responsible for stocking ships with food for voyages. That's what the root of this is. So the guy that has to make sure you have enough food on the ship to feed the crew on a voyage is the same root word that we have here for harlot. Okay, and it's broader, but that's the idea. Okay, so it begins in verse 16. I think so much of this, I mean, he's still a young man here, but to do this, to draw on human nature here, to argue this on the front of it would be tough, because we need something more concrete. All right, this is the application of divine wisdom. That's what we're looking at here, and now it's part of the inspired record. So in verse 16 it says, "And there came there two women that were harlots unto the king, and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, so they share a place. And I was delivered of a child with her in the house." So she has this just a newborn baby, all right? "And it came to pass the third day that after I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also." So we have two newborns, and the only difference between these two is 3 days. Okay, these are little babies. This is nymphos, all right, in the Greek. I mean, just a babe, little wrapped in swaddling clothes kind of babes. Okay, little ones. He said, so there's these little babies in the house with these two unmarried women. They live in the same place, and this is they're setting up the story here. I think it's interesting here that to make a good decision, Solomon, for all of this, is just listening. He doesn't say anything here until you get the end of this passage. He is going to let everybody say everything they need to say, because he is going to be swift to hear and slow to speak. This is where wisdom comes from, beloved. So he's bringing these ladies in, and I can't imagine what it was like for Solomon to listen to this, because this is the biblical record, all right? But I mean, to hear this story, okay? And think about these ladies, too, standing before the king of Israel, all right? So it goes on. "And the woman was delivered also, and we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house." We're getting it narrowed down. What we're about ready to tell you can only include the two babies and us. There's no other people involved. Solomon doesn't have to say, yes, but was there anyone else involved? All right? They already make this clear, according to the account. They are giving this information. And until right to the end, Solomon doesn't think he needs to hear anything else, because he does not quiz them. This is the biblical account. But if you had people before you and you had to adjudicate something, you want to make sure if they don't ask the questions, you or fill in all the blanks, you have to. You'd have to say, if they didn't already divulge it here, you'd have to say, yes, was there anybody in the house with you? All right, that could have caused what is happening, what you're going to say. They're saying, no, it's just us. All right, so we'll just press on here, because I'm thinking, when we deal with things, oftentimes the information you get, you have to keep squeezing it out of people before you can make a decision. They don't want to divulge everything, all right? So you have to ask. And if you're trying to make decisions on people that don't want to tell you what's going on, that's really tough. Now, these women are open-faced, and they're just going to say the whole thing, all right? That's really what you're looking for if you really want justice. But these kind of things in the world in which we live in take whole court cases to determine, hours and hours of deliberation, because nobody wants to say, unless they're under oath, threatened with perjury or going to jail, to say what's happening. So these ladies are just laying it all out clearly before the king. And it says, "And this woman's child died in the night, because she overlaid it. So she's saying this lady right here, her baby is gone because she rolled over and laid on top of it, and essentially she smothered the infant. All right. And I thought about that. I've been thinking about that ever since. I was thinking about this last night, just laying in bed. I mean, why you don't fall asleep with an infant? All right, you have a little crib next to the bed. All right, or a little bassinet next to the bed because you roll over and they're so tiny. All right, and they need to be protected because of this story. If you lay in a bed with an infant and you're dead tired of sleep because you've been working at the inn all night, all right, and then you come home and you just roll over and the baby's in bed with you, what happens here is the one mother smothered her baby. It's a terrible tragedy, which could have been avoided if she had someplace else for this little one to sleep. And that is just a practical thing. It's a practical application of this, all right? It said, and she arose at midnight. So the woman who is going to be justified here is telling the story on this other woman. She killed her baby because she rolled over on top of it and smothered the little one. And then in midnight, while we're all sleeping, when she realizes this, and she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me, all right, while I'm sleeping, while my handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom. So she took my baby, all right, and she laid laid it in her bosom. So she's laying close to my son because they're only 3 days different, and took the dead child and laid it in my bosom, laid the dead baby next to me, as if I was the one that overlaid it. Now, you're saying to yourself, if you're the king listening to this, how in the world are you going to ever sort that out? That's my point when I was setting this up. How are you going to be able to tell? Because there was no witnesses. There's no witnesses. That's what makes this just a brilliant story, a true event. You got two ladies, two babies, one's alive, one's dead. There's nobody else to witness it. You're just taking their word for it, which you can't. Solomon doesn't take anybody's word for this. He knows the nature of motherhood, though. That's what he's dealing with. You begin understanding who you're dealing with. Who are you dealing with? And in this case, it's the love a mother, the natural love a mother has for her child. That's why they're there in the first place. All right, and this is what he's working from. And again, there's no verse for this. This is just the application of what the Bible says in real life situation. And so he's going to something that God built into mothers, which is the love of their child, except it says that in the end times, when perilous times come, there's going to be without natural affection. And I would put abortion under without natural affection. All right. And God, you've heard me say God forgives everything, but the implications of abortion are terrible. I just saw on the news that some wonderful young lady, because of abortion and the grief that she carried, hung herself. Because after it was done, she thought she was going to be relieved of the pressure of raising this child. The grief and the anxiety overwhelmed her so that she took her life. And then you have these rebels like the Planned Parenthood or the Planned Kill Off the Human Race group online as well, taking great pride in the fact of how many babies that they've killed. All right. It's a terrible thing. That is without natural affection, because it's natural for a mother to love their baby. It is very natural. All right. We're living in a world so upside down. Did you see this lady that's testifying before Congress talking about how men can bear children? And she said, and she looks at the congressman and telling that she's the expert, so you should yield to me. And then and then she went through all of these things about how men can bear babies, and she's making the case for it, like from a forensic physiological perspective, and the congressmen are just sitting back looking at her like the world is off the rails. It's lunacy is what we're talking about here. And I mean, I'm getting off track here just a little, but beloved, the more you think about what's happening, especially this transsexual stuff, homosexual stuff, and this transsexual stuff, so much of this is because there's got to be there's confusion in the mind, and I'm saying that confusion is real. I mean, not for everybody, but I'm saying that it's real, and I believe because of how evil it is and what it is, especially with the mutilation of children, and all of that's going on, that this is just the work of Satan. I mean, I'll just put it out there. I think this is. I think as we near the end of time, satanic activity is going to be on the rise. I've taught that. I've taught that for years, and I just think that this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a delusion, a satanic delusion, that's in operation. And you say, well, it's easy for that. You can just push it off on the devil. I'm not saying it's only that. The devil works in complex ways, but behind it is the adversary. That's what we're looking at here. So if you want to argue the psychological things and the societal things and all those things, I mean, I'm with all of that as well. You want to factor all that in, but behind it, what will put you on that track in the first place is demonic. That's what we're looking at here. Okay, that was not in here. So we'll get back to the ladies. It said, so the dead baby is with the mother that had the living child, and the living child is with the lady whose child overlaid and she suffocated. And it says, and when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, that is to breastfeed my baby, when I got up to feed my baby, the mom knows it's not hers. All right. When I got up, behold, it was dead. The baby's dead. But when I had considered it, when I looked at it in the morning, that is in the light, when I could see the little guy's face, all right, in the shape of his body and everything, he says, behold, it was not my son, which I did bear. The one that I had when I was going to wake up in the morning and feed the little guy, but when I could get a closer look at things, because we don't have lights that you could just click on, I realized that the baby that I held in my arms was not my son, all right? And moms know this, all right? Listen, I don't think you actually have to be a mom to know this, especially like of all the hours I've spent outside of nursery in the hospital. You look in there at all those kids, and you can tell who's who, all right? You just can. Even in their little faces, and I have, of all my boys, the Mike and Andrew, the twins, you can tell they are identical, but when you see them, you can tell which one is which. And now they've grown up to be, men and accomplished, but you can tell. And so the mom says, when I finally could see in the light, this wasn't my baby. He said, and the other woman said, he said in verse 22, and the other woman said, nay, no. Like she's telling the mom, like, you don't know what your boy looks like. He said, and the other woman said, nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And there is the rub. That's where I put in the margin. This is the contest. This is why we're here. One is saying the dead baby's your son, and the other one is saying, no, it's not. You have my boy. That's what's going on here. This is what Solomon has to sort out with no other witnesses. No wonder it comes down to what it says here at the end of this chapter. He said, and this said, no, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king, and that is it. Now they're done speaking. It all comes down to this. That's my boy. Her boy's dead because she overlaid it and suffocated the little one. Now she wants my son, and she's going to leave me with her son that she suffocated. It's a tragedy, but the tragedy is going to unfold because the one woman is going to take the other woman's child. All right, and then here we go, verse 23. Here comes the king. Then said the king, the one saith, this is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, nay, but the son is dead, and my son is the living. So verse 23 is so crucial. What does Solomon say succinctly in like one sentence? He's heard this whole story from these ladies, which I think there's probably more words than the Bible's telling us when this is all going on, right? Can you imagine the looks back at one another? I mean, what's going on here? And then the palace and the king. Before Solomon does anything, he reads back to them what they just said. He is telling them, this is what we're dealing with. After I've heard all this information, he summarizes it in verse 23. Then said the king, the one saith, you are saying, this is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other, you saith, nay, but my son is the dead, and my son is the living. There is what we're going to adjudicate. If you can't do that, you need to ask more questions. You need more information. If you can't get it down to what are we talking about here? If you don't have that summary statement in verse 23, you can make a decision that has nothing to do with anything because you're deciding on something that they're not there to talk about. Yeah, that's not what I'm here for. This does not happen with Solomon. Solomon gets all of the data that he needs to make the decision and knows it so well, he can read it back to them. You should be able to do that. So why we're here is this. Bang, 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 bang. That's what we're here. And then when everybody goes, yep, now you know what you're going to act on. If you can't say that, then you need to work on it until you're able to. That way you'll be on track. And that's what he does. Little summary statement here. And while everybody says, yep, that's what's going on, here we go. Verse 24. And the king said, bring me a sword. Bring me a sword? That is not what anybody is expecting. Bring me a sword? Because Solomon knows exactly where he's going. No one else in the room knows where he's going, but he is functioning from the perspective that the real mother is going to respond in a particular way when I do this next thing. This is what he's counting on. This is not by mistake, or it's not like a test. He is counting on the human nature of a mother's love for the child. That is how he is going to govern this. He's going to decide this, and the way he's going to decide this is he's going to do what we know he does. He says, we're just going to cut the baby in half and give one half to one of you and one half to the other, which means we're going to kill the baby. He never is going to kill the baby. That's not what Solomon is going to do. He just knows as the king, if he says that, it's going to scare the living daylights out of a mother that truly loves the baby. She will not allow the king to do this. She will protest, and of course she does. Solomon has this all lined up, knowing where this is going, all right? Because one of these women is the real mother. At this stage, he doesn't know, but one of them is, and one of them loves this little one because that's the nature of moms. So he's going to put them both like on a hot seat here. That's what he's going to do right now. He's going to pressure them to respond in a way that he's expecting them to respond. So he goes on. It says, and they brought the sword before the king. Boy, what could they be thinking? I mean, the real mom right here, I think, she is just probably just sweating. She's just shaking because it's the king, and now there's a sword. We know what swords are for. Everybody knows what a sword's for. Why are we including a sword in this? And the real mom is saying, and there's my baby. The other one is already dead. The only one that can be, I mean, it's either us or the baby. That's the only reason there could be a sword called. And the king said, divide the living child in two and give half to the one and half to the other. And that's what he said. He said, take the sword, divide that child in two, and give half to one man and half to another, which just is a terrifying perspective. But this is demonstrating how Solomon is going to get human nature to function. He's going to use the possibility of death to bring out the motherly instinct for her child. That's what he's doing. He said, because no mother wants to see her son, her baby, injured in any way or at all, or killed. All right. And it says, then spake and here it is, verse 26. This would have just happened like immediately because he says we're going to cut the baby in half, give half to one and half to the other. The real mom is dying in her heart. to think that she's come to the king for help, and the help is going to be, we're going to divide my son, and he's going to be dead, and we're both going to get half. What a gruesome thought. It is a gruesome thought. It says, then spake the woman. I mean, she just would have just said, spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king. It says, and here's what the word of God says, for the bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, that is, this is anxiety and pressure and love and all these emotions that are from deep inside of us. Speaking of the bowels, all right, because it's her boy. All right, and the king says, we're going to cut my boy in half. And she cries out to the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, oh, my Lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. If it's coming down to this, then give my boy to the other woman. Oh, what? This is a mother's love. And this is what Solomon is counting on. You see, he knows this is, in his heart of hearts, he knows this is where he's going. That baby's never going to get cut in half. But the real mom is not going to have this. You see, this is your mom. This is your mom. What a story. You know, I was thinking, we tell this story, but, you know, this little guy is going to be raised in one of the most prosperous time of Israel's history. I mean, when silver is nothing and everybody has gold, there's peace, there's high taxation. But, I mean, this is when there's 2 cars in every garage and everybody is just living like high on the hog. This boy is going to grow up in some of the most wonderful time in all the history of Israel, in a time unsurpassed in Israel's history. And he's going to have this story that his mom tells him about talking to the king when he was just a little baby and what my mom did. When we get to heaven, I hope this little guy is there, right? I got to hope that he is. All right. Grown man talking about what it was like living under King Solomon and how of Solomon's test and how my mom loved me. Okay. That's what we're going to hear from. He goes on. He said, no wise slay it. But the other said, and here's how Solomon knows. The mom says, give it to her. Don't kill it. But the woman whose son she smothered said, let it be neither mine nor thine, but divide it. No mom, see, is going to say that. The fact that she wants the other woman's boy is evidence of that. All right. She just says, no, go ahead, because the boy that is under contention here belongs to isn't hers. Go ahead, because it's not my boy, okay? It's her boy, so if you need to chop it in half, king, go for it. No mom says that. No mom says that to the king. This is the opposite of human nature, you see. And Solomon understands this. So you got one mom saying, yeah, go ahead and kill the baby. What mother would say that? The reason they're there getting this adjudicated is because she's trying to save her son. That's why she's there and contesting the claim of this woman that the dead boy is yours. And she's saying, no, the dead boy, you got him over there. That's why this is happening. So one says, go ahead and kill the baby. Solomon knows right away, as we should. That's not the mom. That's not the mom. The mom is the one, listen, if I can't have it, give it to her. It's better that he lives than dies in this manner. That's what's going on. And then it said, verse 27, and the king answered and said, give her the living child, that in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof. He knows exactly who it goes to. Give it to the woman who said, give her, I'd rather that you gave my baby to this woman who took him than kill him. And Solomon says, I know who it is. Give it to the woman that says, keep the baby alive. He said, and the king answered and said, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof. And what a thing to witness. That's why it's one of the great stories in the Bible. And then it says this, in verse 28, and all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged. Yeah, what a story. You think about, man, that went out on all the news, on the radio, that went out on all the press, it went everywhere about what the king did, how he was able to adjudicate something he wasn't even there, and he could still determine who the mom was. I mean, this is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. He said, and it said, and they feared the king. And the commentators are great on this, and I mean, they reverenced him, and it's going to go on here, but they feared the king because of this. If you're guilty, you don't want to come before this guy. You don't want to come before King Solomon and be a liar, because he'll find out. He has the wisdom to utilize the whole world to determine whether or not you're telling the truth. That is amazing. That is amazing. That's what he was able to do. We have libraries of law books trying to sort this out. All right. Solomon, because of this endowed wisdom, this imparted wisdom, was able to draw on all of this to adjudicate this and say, nope, the baby belongs to that woman. And that little guy went back into the arms of his mom. And I don't know if those two ladies lived in the same place after that, or if they were working in the same place, whether they were working together after that, or whether or not. I mean, what do you say? I don't know. It doesn't say what happens to the person that brought the false claim. All right. I mean, and brought all of this. Okay. But the key is the mother got her baby back. And then it goes on. It said, and they feared the king because he's going to find out. You don't want to stand before him. It's like he can look right into your soul kind of idea. All right. For they saw that the wisdom of God was with him. That's what people saw. They saw in this the wisdom of God to do judgment. What a story. If there's something you should desire, of all the things you desire, ask for wisdom. What a tremendous story, isn't it? It's wonderful. And that woman left with her baby rejoicing. All right. The other woman, it's very sad because of the accident. And we're arguing it was an accident, of course. But what a story. Okay. Well, there we have it. It's powerful. It's a little lighter. I mean, we love to see the right thing done, right? Okay. Well, Lord bless you, and Lord willing, I'll see everybody tomorrow. Okay, we'll see you.